Throughout my combat career in this game, I had the chance to see a lot of different builds. I also had the chance to fight with a lot of ships. Unfortunately, most of the builds that I have seen lately were very bad, but there had been some very good ones as well. A lot of the builds that I show you here have been inspired by builds that I see from my kills and basically builds that my friends use, and they usually inspire me to go and come up with something of my own. Now, I have been very impressed by the battle ventures, by the battle oracles and battle oracles, or well, not battle oracles, but battle orcas, my apologies. Now, today I'll be starting a new mini-series, basically called Battle Logies, and I had the chance to fight with a lot of battle logies. I have seen a lot of different builds. Now, I'll show you some of the kills that I can find here. Most of the battle logies that I have seen were very similar to each other. 90% of them were built for tank, while the 10% were also built for DPS, but the vast majority of the battle logies are tank builds, and I think that's because of how the logies work. Now, today I'll be flying the Exequror 2. That's basically the first battle logie that I'll be taking a look at, but besides the Exequror, there's also a lot of different battle logies that I have encountered. The Exequror is one of them. Let me just try and find it. It has a very interesting name, Exequror. Yeah, let me put that in. So battle logies are a very interesting concept, and I do plan to fly all of them, and I do plan to show you how all of the ships work. Now, as we can see, they all have in common, they have the tank in common, all of them, and 90% of them are built for tanking purposes. Besides the battle logie cruisers, there are also battle logie battle cruisers, which are also very interesting, but most of the battle logie battle cruisers, I have seen them to be used as proper logies. There is the small portion of them that are used as combat ships. They are very interesting, and they do have a potential to be highly lethal in the hands of a good pilot. Basically, the main goal of these ships is to outlast your target. Now, when I say outlast the target, that means to outlive the target in tank, because these ships are known to have one of the best capacitors out of any other ship in the game, especially when you enter the recharge mode, which makes these ships very interesting if you build them for PvP, if you build them with a combat build. Now, from the skills, you are not going to get any extra DPS, you are not going to get any extra weapon damage or drone damage. All of the skills here are going to be oriented for logie purposes, and that means you don't even have to have the logistic skills, but I recommend that you have the cruiser skills, because getting extra capacitor, extra speed, shield hull and armor is always a good thing. As I mentioned before, the capacitor on these ships is fantastic. The Executor can technically do a armor or shield tank, but in most of the cases the shield tank is working really well, but the armor also is a valid choice. I'll be doing a shield tank today. The ship is very fast, it can lock 7 targets, very good capacitor recharge time and recharge rate, and the Executor is also fairly fast. It is not a slow ship. So overall, has some very interesting traits and overall very good stats. And as for the build, now on most of these ships you are going to find missiles, rapid missiles or torpedo launchers, but I would say rapid missiles are the best balance. You can easily hit small ships as well as the big ones. 1 scrambler, 2 orbs, 1 large neutralizer, 1 drone, one afterburner, one large booster, and triple adaptive shield harness. I'll show you the expensive build and the cheaper build because I have seen a bunch of these ships using integrations, and that got me curious to see what stats the integrations can actually give to this ship. Now, as for the nanocore, most of the nanocores will be focused on logi purposes. You have some with drone damage and some with railgun damage, but the one that I like to use is the Serpentis Veteran core. Basically, it gives you extra web strength, and extra web strength is a very good thing to have. It is also a blue nanocore, and you can basically manufacture it or you can buy it from the market. Overall, this blue nanocore is fantastic, and this is the one that I'll be using throughout this video. As for the rigs, this is the first expensive build, and later I will swap the rigs and I'll use the ship with the cheap ones. Now, I focused on activation and adjustment, reduced capacitor, and I've covered the two main holes in the shield, which is EM and thermal, 54, 63, 46 and 50% resistance, and 1152 repair every 3.65 seconds, which is, really good. In about 20 seconds your shield is back up to 100% from zero, and the capacitor lasts also quite a long time. So let me show you the active stats of the ship. For the implants, you can use the warhead charge and the tactical missiles if you are using missiles, but you are not limited to missiles. You can also use the turrets. However, I recommend that you use a weapon system that is not going to use capacitor. That way your capacitor runtime is going to be as good as possible, and that's why I recommend that you use either missiles or projectile turrets, the autocannons. And with the autocannons you can easily use the barrage implant, which will give you some very scary DPS for a short amount of time, which can be very interesting. Okay, let's take a look at the active stats. 63,829 hit points, 84, 87, 81 and 83% resistance on the shield, which is really good, I would say. 1096.74 meter per second is the afterburner velocity. Again, very solid velocity. It's a speedy little ship. And now let's enter the recharge mode. Now, the recharge mode does reduce your speed and plus 100% radius, but plus minus 50% extra capacitor recharge, which technically means your capacitor's recharge will be almost doubled. And now 3 minutes and 13 seconds is the capacitor runtime. These are the engineering rigs, dual ancillary power grid routers, and one capacitor rig. With a different build with cheaper modules, you can easily replace those power grid rigs with more capacitor rigs. After all, you want to have the best possible capacitor. That way you can outlive the target, and you don't have some good DPS. Well, I mean, the DPS is fine, I'm not going to complain about that, but the main thing about these battle logies is the tank, and the fact that if you catch someone, they most likely are not going to be able to break your tank, and eventually they die, but you have a capacitor, you have a fantastic capacitor, and that means your ship will live. And honestly, this is a Gallente ship, and for a Gallente ship, it actually looks pretty good. Most of the Gallente ships are pretty ugly, but this ship is actually beautiful. I like it. It has a very interesting hull design, and I love it. Okay, let's take a look at the other implant, at the tactical missiles. The tactical missile implant is good if your target has a lot of stabs. Basically, the tactical missile implant will give you extra points, and warhead charge or tactical missiles both are good. It really depends on which one you prefer, depends on which one you like more, and it honestly depends on the tactic and ship that you are using. Now, as for the general units for both of these ships, I did pick the shield booster boost amount because I already have reduced shield booster usage with the rigs, so I can improve the capacitor boost time with the unit so that my ship repairs itself faster. And honestly, the ship booster performance on this thing is really good. It's really tanky, and it's definitely impressive what you can get. You can easily do a very capacitor heavy build and you will still have a fantastic capacitor because of the recharge time, and that makes the battle logies so good. The fact that you can make them nearly capacitor stable and you can make them recharge the capacitor very quickly with the recharge mode, that makes them honestly very scary for PvP. And now the DPS is much better, but the effect of the tactical missiles is not, not that long. The tactical missiles have short damage boost, meanwhile the warhead charge has a constant DPS output. And you can also use the torpedo launchers. The torpedo launchers are good against big ships like cruisers, but technically can be used against small things if you can web them. After all, you have the extra web strength with the nanocore, so it would apply damage to small things. But the heavy assault missiles are mostly good against cruisers, battle cruisers, and big ships. My friend and I have been playing together for a very long time now, and at one point they have used a Exequror, and we used to jump battleships with our cruisers. He would use a Exequror battle logie, I would use an Ashimu. And the Exequror is one of the few ships that can easily troll an Ashimu 1v1. With neutralizers, you can basically cap the Ashimu before the Ashimu caps you, so this is also why these things are so good. The battle logies are killing Ashimus, but honestly nowadays anything can kill an Ashimu because of the implants, and the Ashimu is not what it used to be. Well, the DPS with the torpedo launchers is much better with the tactical missiles active, but again, the effect of the tactical missiles doesn't last that long, and I still would prefer the warhead charge over this one. But again, in the end, you use the implant that you like the most, and you use the implant that you think works better for your ship. I say that both work and both are fantastic, but I personally really enjoy using the warhead charge. It is so satisfying to use. It's a very interesting implant indeed. And let's take a look at the DPS with the tactical missiles. Now you have also the different modes. You have the long range, the damage application mode. You can use both of them depending on the target, depending on the need. But overall, it should be really good by default. 501, 19.64, 86.06. I mean, overall very good stats. Definitely the new skills help. The new skills definitely help a lot. Now it's 43, again really solid, and now with the damage mode 707.59 DPS, which is really solid. Now you can also do a build like this. Now have a medium capacitor battery, a large booster, a large neutralizer. Also works if your capacitor isn't stable, or if you are not happy with the capacitor performance. This build also should be very interesting, and could even work a bit better than the previous build against a Blood Raider ship, for example. An Ashimu will have a hard time to go through the tank on this thing, especially with the recharge mode, so that's one way how you can outlast the Blood Raider vampires. I have seen it happen, we have tested it out, and yes, the Executor kills an Ashimu 1v1. If the Ashimu is a brawler build, then yeah, the Ashimu is in trouble. And I'll show you some other builds later on that are going to be very good inside of a Inquisitor or Scout Anomaly. This build can be used in low sec, in low sec, because it has the afterburn, you can move around quite fast. I lost a bit of hit points there, but I gained a better capacitor, 5 minutes and 2 seconds. This is with the recharge mode. And honestly, this does take a while to... The capacitor in this thing does take a while to deplete. These ships have an amazing capacity performance, and you can use the large neutralizer, and very soon in this video I will show you a build with dual medium neutralizers, and I kinda like the build with medium neutralizers a bit more, because then the ship is actually capacitor stable. Meanwhile, it depletes the enemy capacitor. I would say it does deplete the capacitor of the enemy ship a bit better, but we will again check that out, mostly because the cycle times of the large neutralizers are much shorter than the cycle of the large neutralizer. And I think dual medium neutralizers kill more capacitor than one large, so that also has that trick. And besides that, capacitor stability is very important. So if you want a stable capacitor, then the medium neutralizer build is probably the way to go. Now in this build you can also use a damage control. The damage control will enhance your passive resistance by 8.86%, but the damage control is also extremely useful nowadays against all of these ships that have high DPS, high burst DPS, like the bombarding plant, barraging plant, and things like that. The damage control became a very important module to have, although with triple adaptives you don't really have to worry about that with the extremely good shield boost performance, because by the time something goes through your shield you already are boosting that shield back up. So with triple adaptives you can technically withstand the drone bombs, and you can technically withstand the barraging plant, but the damage control makes that a lot easier. And let's take a look at the stats. 177,000 hit points, 94, 95, 93 and 93% resistance, which yes you can see is pretty solid. And yeah, this will definitely last for a very long time against a lot of nasty DPS ships out there. This is an example of a build that is killing the glass DPS ships, because you can easily tank them and you can easily outlast them, and if they don't have stabs they can't run away. This is the medium neutralizer build. I have two of them, one web, one scrambler, one large booster, capacitor, battery, adaptives, and a afterburner. And now the capacitor is stable, which is fantastic news. Now I can run the ship basically permanently, and I would actually prefer this build over the large neutralizer build, but again, I think it comes down to the situation. I believe there are situations where the large neutralizer can be good. I mean, you can have like 2 extra webs if you have the large neutralizer. Meanwhile, with the medium neutralizer, you have 2 of them, and you can only have like one web and 1 scrambler. You can also do multiple scrambler builds, but I feel like the webs and neutralizers are definitely the way to go on this thing. And well, the capacitor does indeed last for a very long time, and even when you go into the logi mode and when you tackle a target, you can turn off the afterburner, which will save some capacitor, but against some ships, against let's say battleships, a 0 kilometer orbit with the afterburner is actually going to be able to speed tank their weapon. So you really have a lot of different ways how to build this thing, and all of the ways that I show you here are going to be very interesting. And overall, I really like how the ship works. So far, I'm pretty impressed by what the Exequror can give. Very interested to see what some of the other battle logies can offer and how some of the other battle logies will perform. But so far, I have to say the Exequror might be my favorite one, but we will see. There is still like 3-4 other battle logies that I have to check out, and All of them are quite different from each other, and all of them have different performance, and that's going to be fun to see. Now this build is a build that I would use exclusively inside of a Inquisitor or Scout anomaly. Dual large boosters, which honestly I feel like it's a bit overkill. Dual large boosters, this definitely can tank a lot of damage, and one large booster is enough to basically withstand a lot of damage. The second one is the panic button, and you can keep one large booster active permanently. Meanwhile, the second one can be used from time to time. A build that I would use for Inquisitor and Scout anomalies, where your target lands on you at 0, where you can quickly tackle them and quickly web and kill them. And when they land on you, they'll have a very bad day, because they can't break this thing that easily. I boost about 2000 hit points every 3 seconds, 3.65 seconds. I have 7.6 thousand shield, so 3.5 cycles and the shield is fully recharged. So that's about 9 seconds, and yeah, that's quite fast. That's quite tank. No denying there, that's quite tank. But if you want to keep both boosters running, they'll be running for about 1 minute and 46 seconds, which I think is already pretty long enough. But you can run one booster eternally. So that's also one thing that is interesting. You can even go further and reduce the capacitor usage by using the general units that will reduce the capacitors of the boosters, which will enhance the capacitor runtime even more. So you really have a lot of different options, and this build is kind of scary, I have to admit. A build like this is kind of scary with dual large boosters. And you also have neutralizers that can be operated for a very long time, so your target's tank will be killed and your target will not be able to go through the tank of this thing. You can also do this build with a damage control and dual neutralizers. Also works very well, and you get some extra resistance on top of that, which is always a good thing.
Undocking.
This way you will be taking even less damage, and with this way you can tank targets even more while retaining the same neutralizer performance and while basically retaining the same shield booster performance. 2 minutes and 14 seconds without the logi mod, 69,865,000 hit points. 404 meter per second is the velocity, which is pretty good. It's very good with for a default speed. And now let's enter the logi mode. Let's turn on the shield booster, and let's take a look at the 206,000 hit points, and the capacitor is stable again. Fantastic news.
Docking request accepted.
Okay, let's dock and let's change the build one more time. You can technically use a micro warp drive if you like, but an afterburner I believe is the sweet spot. You still have some very good capacitor, and this is the build with the capacitor battery and micro warp drive. Let me show you how fast this ship can go out of curiosity, but in most cases the afterburner is the sweet spot. Especially if you're aiming for a ship that should last for a very long time in combat, basically a endurance ship. Moment and 20 seconds. Overall pretty good. I mean, the tank is about the same. The micro warp drive does reduce your capacitor, so that's one of the reasons why I personally don't really prefer to use the afterburner, to use the micro warp drive, because it does impact your capacitor. And if you're already playing to bait with this ship, the afterburner is still going to be the way to go, and definitely one of the better options out there. The micro-drift can be good if you like to run around in nullsec, I guess, but you will have a big impact on the capacitor, and that might eventually impact the overall. That will potentially impact the overall performance of the tank. But we will test that out. 2327.59 meters per second. Pretty fast. It can technically be faster. I didn't use any unit for afterburn or any unit for the or any general unit for the micro-water, so that's definitely not the final speed. Okay, now let me go and let me show you the cheaper option. Now as for the tank, just a basic anti-EM and anti-thermal screen enforcer are more than enough, and for the third rig you can for the third rig you can add a bit more shield repair. You can also reduce the shield capacity usage. You can also go and enhance the resistance even more, basically dual EM screen enforcers. You really have a lot of different options there, but I think the hole in the EM will be fixed when I turn on my adaptives. So for the third rig, I think I might even go with the activation time adjustment. That way the shield booster will perform faster, and therefore it will improve how much shield the ship can recover. Also a very good idea. Instead of the one capacity battery, I can slap another adaptive hardener, and now I'll undock and I will test out the ship with this build. A little impact on the capacitor, it will be a little impact on the overall ship tank, but the main stats of the ship should remain unchanged. The main stats being the shield booster boost mouth, the shield booster capacitor usage, and the resistance should generally be the same, although of course there is going to be a difference between the integration rigs and normal rigs, but you have to keep in mind that the integration rigs cost a lot, while a build like this will perform about the same, but it costs just a fraction, not even a fraction of what the integration rigs cost. And yes, the performance is almost the same. 79, 83, 81 and 83, which honestly is still really good and really solid. 59,000 hit points, again a very small difference. 6 minutes and 3 seconds is the capacitor runtime, which, it's not capacitor stable, but you can make it capacitor stable if you change the general unit on the booster to be the efficiency unit, and that way your ship will be capacitor while retaining about the same shield booster performance. And yeah, that was very interesting idea, and time to see how this little boat works in combat. Now I have a rule that I follow. Before I use a ship for PvP, I first learn how the ship works. I learn how the ship behaves. I know I go to learn all the ship advantages and disadvantages. I basically learn what I can do, and
we're under attack.
I learn what I can do. So I have plans for the Exequror. I plan to fly it in PvP, but as I said, I have to follow my rules, and first I have to learn how to fly it. And when I say learn how to fly it, I'm trying to figure out what aspects of the ship I might have to improve. And I'm also thinking about trying out the armor tank, but I think the shield tank is a lot easier to do because the shield booster does use a lot less power grid, Meanwhile, if I were to go with a armor tank with a large armor repair, that would be definitely very heavy on the power grid. So a dual medium armor repair build might be the way to go, but that will sacrifice a bit of tank. But at the same time, I also have the thermal circulation implant, which can replace one adaptive. So yeah, there is definitely a lot of things that I have to try out with the Exequror. What kind of name is that? With the Executor logi. Now you might be asking, where are my frame rates? Well, my frame rate is well, my FPS is gone for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but it is unfortunately the case. So my apologies for any lag that you might encounter. I'll let my shield get damaged, and then I will go and show you how much it does, how much shield boost it does repair. And so far it seems to be holding really well. This is the capacitor stable build. Now with the cheaper rigs it says that the capacitor lasts like 6 minutes and 3 seconds. That is with all the modules active, but if you turn off the afterburner, then you are capacitor stable. So technically you don't have to get any general unit for reducing the shield booster usage. You just need to turn off the afterburner at 0, and basically your ship is capacitor stable. That one web is going to keep the target from moving, and that one's scrammer is also going to keep the target from moving. Now there are some ships that are going to have an afterburner, and in that case dual webs is definitely going to be the way to go, but once their capacitor is dead they will not be able to use the afterburner anymore, and they are going to be dead pretty soon. Again, you fight longer battles with battle logi because the main thing about these ships is the tank. Now, when I went back and when I looked at the other bait ships that I built, I would say it is definitely a lot more obvious and a lot more suspicious if you're, let's say, scanning around, and if you see a random like Skyte or a random Executor just sitting inside of an anomaly, or Inquisitor or Scout site, that is a spy. That is not a, that is a bait 100%. So if you see a random logi just chilling inside of a anomaly, that's a bait, and they are waiting for someone to warp in. Now, what makes the Battle Venture, Battle Rorqual, well, not the Rorqual exactly, but Battle Orca and other mining ships so effective and so good is that not many players expect them to be baits. It is more obvious that a logi is a bait than that a, let's say, venture is a bait. So that's why the battle ventures have, I would say, more success than the battle logis. And I think that's also not accurate what I just said. Their success rate seems to be, I guess, about the same, but you are definitely going to get more fights if you are a battle. You'll have more fights in a battle venture, let's say, or battle orca than a battle logi. That's because the battle logi is a lot more suspicious. But I have seen some players legitimately use these ships for PvE, so there's a chance that you might encounter those as well. They're definitely not good PvE ships, and do not do missions with them unless you plan to bait. So yeah, fantastic PvP ships, honestly, and fantastic bait ships. And I still don't really understand why players still engage them when they know that these things are built to last very long. I mean, my friends have so much success with these ships, it's funny. one of my friends killed like a apocalypse striker recently with one, so they still do get jumped, surprisingly. But I would say we would definitely have a lot more fights if you will definitely get a lot more fights with the battle venture, which is funny. But at the same time, also obvious that that ventures will get more. I say more action, but it's really about the same. But I'm just looking from the aspect that players know that if they see a logie in a belt or in an anomaly, that's a bait. Meanwhile, if you see a miner in a belt, then there's a good chance that they're actually mining. So that's why the mining ships get engaged a lot more often. So yeah, that's just based on that and based on what I personally seen and experienced and what a lot of you guys have told me as well. So I am so far really happy with how the Exequror works, and I think a build like this is definitely going to be the way to go for me, at least for now. I will definitely play around with a lot of different builds, but I honestly don't really think that it's going to be necessary to change the build. And one thing that I am kind of thinking about is to skill a bit more into logies. Basically, perhaps I decide to use the logies as a logie at one point, so might actually go and change the skill a bit. Just to have skills for a proper logie ship, because it would feel very weird and awkward if I were to fly a ship that I don't have skills for. Now, you don't need to have logie skills in order to use the battle logie. The one thing that you have to have, though, are skills for cruisers. Basically, cruiser engineering, cruiser command, and things like that. Just to improve the shield, hull armor, just to improve the speed of the ship, warp speed. I mean, warp capacitor usage. And things like that have to be improved in order to maximize the performance of a ship like this. And that's what I will be well, I think that's what I already have basically maxed out, because I have maxed out cruiser skills. But I will go and do some skills for the logie side of the ship, although I don't really have currently I don't have the, let's say, the need to have a logie, but it's always nice to have skills for a lot of ships. You never know when you need them, so I'll definitely do skill into the logie part of the ship. As for the weapon systems, I also thought about the autocannons, and I did say that on the start of the video. Basically, the autocannons can be a very nasty surprise for your targets, especially if you have the barrage implant. Now, technically, you can take any weapon system, but I prefer that the weapon system doesn't use capacitor, because capacitor is very important for this ship. If you were to go with lasers, and you can do that, by the way, you can add lasers, you can add railguns, and with the thermal circulation you can actually go and do the armor tank, because you have the thermal circulation implant, and that will improve the DPS and tank at the same time. But it will have an impact on the capacitor, and even the recharge mode does help, but you will have a better capacitor with weapons that don't use capacitor than with weapons that have capacitor usage, basically energy weapons. So for maximum endurance and for maximum capacitor performance, I really recommend that you use weapons that don't use capacitor. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't use weapons that use capacitor. I'm just saying that that weapons that don't use capacitor are just much better for a longer battle. And they're good against blood raider ships, because they don't need capacitor to run, and you can damage the Blood Raider, while the Blood Raider, once their capacitor is dead, cannot damage you, which, you know, is a very interesting idea. And for lasers, for let's say if you're fighting an Ashmu, fit a yellow hardener instead of one adaptive. That way your resistance against lasers is going to be basically maximized, and then the lasers will barely do any damage to your ship. So that's basically some of the ideas that I've collected over time, some of the ideas that I come up with, some of the ideas that my friends told me, and some of the ideas that I see from the builds that from the ships that I have destroyed, or ships that I have seen in the corp log. Overall, the battle logi, at least at the moment, is definitely a very interesting idea. The implants might have changed things, but at the same time the implants also have improved these ships. And I'm very curious to see how the battlecruiser logies will work. For example, that Harpy logistics that I've killed was very tanky. And I'm also very curious to see how a armor tank battle logi will work, because there are some ships that have like a lot more armor than shield, so technically you can do an armor tank on them with the thermal circulation implant, with the same builds, with the same missiles basically, rapid missiles or torpedo launchers, and technically they should be extremely difficult to kill. There is also the idea with the Battle Guardians. Now they are also extremely interesting, and you can make them a bait ship as well. The Battle Guardians would be known to have extreme shield or armor resistance, although they don't have the same, let's say, capacitor regeneration ability, but they sure have a very good tank. So that's also one of the ideas that I will put to the test, just, you know, out of curiosity. The outside of the box builds are very interesting, and next week, I already talked about this before, but next week we are getting some new ships, and a lot of you guys asked me about what kind of ships I expect them to be. Now, I made a video about that like a couple days ago. Basically, I covered the Tech 2 ships, Tech 2 battlecruisers, Tech 2 cruisers, Tech 3 destroyers, and Tech 3 cruisers. And basically, I would like them to be added. But if you remember, a long time ago, we had these. All of you guys probably don't remember, but we had the Evor ships, basically versions of the RB Bellicose, you know, ships like that, with a Evor purpose and with Evor capabilities. There have been also frigates that have the Evor purpose and Evor capabilities. I used to fly the Crucifer Evor in the alpha and beta days. I loved that ship. It had like 5 medium slots, and you could fit like 2 Nosferatu. It had a bonus on Nosferatus and neutralizers, and it had a bonus on webs, basically a mini Blood Raider ship. So I believe that they might add those back with changed looks. And honestly, if they do that, and if they change their stats a little bit, those things will be extremely fun to fly. And I'm honestly quite excited for it, because I'm one of the pilots who basically flew all ships, and I honestly need something fresh and something new. And the new ships are definitely going to be on my list on my to fly list. Now, a lot of you guys also asked me how do I think that they would be obtainable. Well, I would say you might have to use the hulls of existing ships in order to manufacture them. So I would say buy as many ships from the market as you can. buy all of the rifters, griffins, buy all of the things, you know, stabbers, because there's a good chance that these ships will be used as material, just like the Imperial carriers are used as material for the faction carriers, just like how the faction dreadnoughts require a Imperial dreadnought, well, in the future, to build a faction dreadnought. So I expect the same manufacturing process on these ships as well. You have to have some materials, you have to have some ships as material as well, some extra materials, some extra items, and probably a blueprint in order to manufacture these ships. Now, this is not a leak. This is not a leak. This is just what the developers have said a long time ago, back when they have launched the faction carriers. Someone asked them about the manufacturing process, and they confirmed that it should be about the same as the manufacturing process of the faction carriers. So that's why I have been saying this for months now, that you should stock up on ships, because new ships are coming, and those new ships that do come will require some of the older ships, some of the older normal ships, in order to manufacture them. So one way to make profit now is, I would say, buy the new ships, and perhaps, you know, the price of these new ships goes up, so you can sell them for a good price. Or, you know, you can use the materials, you can use the ships as materials, and then basically build these new ships, and again sell them for a good price. That's one of the way how you can make ISK at the moment from the industry. So, how do I like the Exequror? Well, it's a very fun ship. Definitely going to fly this thing. I love it, and I have some very nasty ideas with it. But I will have to try out the other battle logies as well. I have been told the Kite is also a fantastic ship, so that one is probably going to be the next one on my list. But
Warp drive active.
I really like the idea of a battle logie. I really like the idea of a bait ship, like, you know, a battle venture and a battle Rorqual or a battle Orca. I think that these are some exotic and hilarious ideas that ended up working really well. So with that being said, hope that you guys have enjoyed
Docking request
this little
accepted.
run with the Exequror. Very, very fun to fly ship, and honestly, I really do like it, and I hope that you guys like this ship as well. So with that being said, stay safe. With that being said, if you want to. And with that being said, if you guys would like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and as always, I'll see you next time.